This podcast is rated S for spoilers. Listener discretion is advised. Don't forget to view our spoiler-free companion video on our Half Past Podcast channel on YouTube. Welcome to the Half Past Podcast. This is episode 28, the movie review of Point Break. We will also be discussing the Hateful 8 trailer. I'm Graham Rickson. Here with me is my friend and co-pilot Ian Jones.
Hey, buddy.
How's it going, man? You watch Star Wars anymore? Any more Star Wars in you?
I've gone to see Star Wars more times than I care to admit. I mean, I'm a pretty big fan anyway, but I have not gotten sick of it.
How many times have you seen it?
Many. I'll leave it at that. I've seen it many times.
That's
Plus,
awesome.
I got these Fandango gift cards.
I got some of those for Christmas too.
Yeah.
Man. Thanks to my sister. It was awesome.
Yeah, my sister did the same thing. Wow, she gets me.
Thanks. All right, so let's go ahead and start talking about this Hateful Eight trailer here. So, this is Quentin Tarantino's next movie here, and he's, I've always liked Tarantino for the most part. His movies always kind of entertain me. I enjoyed Inglourious Basterds and Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. He's definitely got some that I don't like.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, he's got some that I don't like, but overall, I think he's done pretty good, and for the most part, he tends to just write and direct and do everything for himself, so it's like always just all him. And the first thing I want to say about this Hateful Eight is I kind of like this style of a Western movie. I think it's going to be kind of fun. It's got a charm to it that shows through the trailer that I already kind of like, so I thought that was really cool. The other thing is I am actually a fan of a lot of these stars in this movie. I am probably one of the only people that really like Tim Roth. I've always liked Tim Roth. And it's such a weird thing, but like it's one of those things where it's like I feel like Tim Roth was the best thing that happened in that really terrible Planet of the Apes movie that Tim Burton did, you know? And I've just always liked everything that he shows up in. Even when he was in that one, what was that TV show he was in?
Lie to me?
Yeah.
Was it Lie to Me?
Lie to Me. I was one of the only people that liked that show. So I enjoy Tim Roth. Samuel L. Jackson's always fun, you know. He's always got that attitude that he brings to a movie, and I think that's pretty cool, so I'm kind of excited about that. Plus, it looks like Michael Madsen has got a job again, so that's nice.
Yeah, I think he only works when Quentin Tarantino comes calling.
Yeah, right? It's pretty interesting.
He's very much an acquired taste. Right? I mean...
Oh, that's awesome. I like how it's a little bit of a shot to Michael Madsen for no reason. Although I agree. Oh man. I think Hateful Eight will be pretty good, and we'll see it this weekend and review it, and I think Quentin Tarantino's actually been doing pretty good. His past like 3 or 4 movies has actually been pretty good, so I think this one looks like it's going to continue on that path. So I'm glad for him. You got anything else for this thing?
No, other than, I think what sold me on this is the trailer. I'm not really a huge Tarantino fan.
I know you don't like Tarantino and you don't like Westerns either.
Well, I would say with an exception.
What would the exception be?
Well, I really enjoyed True Grit.
True Grit's very good. Both of them are good.
Yeah, both of them are good. I think that there are it's tough for me to talk about liking Quentin Tarantino when, to me, his crowning achievement is Ving Rhames taking it up the keister. Right? I mean, that did happen.
Yeah, that definitely happens in that movie. But overall, I feel like Pulp Fiction is just such a good movie. And it's different. And the thing about Quentin Tarantino is he's spent his entire career writing and directing movies that are in genres that are essentially gone. And he does it, and I think he does it well enough to keep him going. And I do enjoy him doing that. And I think that's one of the things why critics tend to like him a lot also, because he definitely takes something that is not in the norm of any other genre or main thing that's happening right now. There are no movies like Hateful Eight out right now. There just isn't. And so, that's the same thing that happened with Django Unchained and Inglourious Bastards. You have this Nazi exploitation movie, which just doesn't exist. You know, it's like that's something they did back then and they don't do anymore. And he takes it and then moves it on. And that's one thing I like about Tarantino, is he actually tries to do something that's completely out of the norm, even though he doesn't always succeed at it. Anything else?
Well, I will say that I did enjoy Django Unchained. I was trying to remember the name of his last
nice
movie, and then you said it, so that's why I was kind of quiet there.
Oh, well, fantastic.
So...
All right, well, we've wasted enough time. We'll watch it this weekend and get a review out. Let's go ahead and get started into Point Break then, huh? We'll get started into the characters and the synopsis.
All right,
let's take a break. Young FBI agent infiltrates an extraordinary team of extreme sports athletes he suspects of masterminding a string of unprecedented, sophisticated corporate heists. That's kind of a mouthful.
That's a tough one. Jeez.
Oh, that wasn't the best for me, but I'm going to leave it in there because it's Point Break. So,
all right.
This movie is directed by Eric Sinclair, who is known for doing the movie Invincible, which is that Marky Mark movie nobody watched. You remember that?
Yep.
He mainly does direct. He's a director of photography for a ton of movies, and that's actually what he's done way more than directing. This movie starring Edgar Ramirez as Bodhi. He is best known for Zero Dark 30, The Bourne Ultimatum, and Wrath of Titans.
Yeah, he's I think probably the talent here.
Yes. He is definitely the talent in this movie.
And one of the things that I always, I had mentioned this last week, or I don't know if it was last podcast or not. The Bourne series is coming back one more time. Edgar Ramirez survives in The Ultimatum. And I always kind of look at when they do one of these Bourne movies, if, maybe one of these guys can come back or not.
Yeah.
But he's technically in the program.
That's so crazy. I have not seen Ultimatum.
Oh, well, okay. All right. Spoiler alert, Graham.
It doesn't matter. But I like the first two Bourne movies, but I just never watched the last one. And I didn't get to see the full. I only saw part of Legacy, so it's kind of unfortunate. I'll definitely go back and just watch all of them because they are fun. I like those movies.
Ultimatum was a little weird. It was almost like Bourne 2.5 because part of it takes place while Bourne 2 is going on. In fact, most of the movie takes place where Bourne 2 is going on.
Huh, that's weird.
And then it syncs up for the last sequence.
Huh.
And to me, I think that's a little bit of a miss. But Edgar Ramirez was Bourne's doppel in that one.
All right. Next up, we have Luke Bracey as Utah. He was in G.I. Joe Retaliation because he was Cobra Commander and the November Man. So he's not doing so well so far.
They're never going to get Cobra Commander right.
No, they are.
Are they? It just isn't possible to do. I mean, that's such a cartoon character anyway.
Yes, yeah, he is.
But
Ray Winstone as Pappas. This guy replaced Gary Busey in the original one. He was been in King Arthur, The Departed, and he's Beowulf in that Beowulf movie, the one that, for some weird reason, all of the CG characters looked like their actor counterparts, which I never did understand, because I figured, why don't you just hire the actors and just do the movie? But whatever.
it might have done a little bit better.
It might have.
That way.
I think people were still, definitely during that time period, people were still getting used to these CG characters, and they weren't the best in that one. Ray Winstone as an actor, though, I really actually like that guy a lot, and he's a very one-note actor. He always plays like tough guys, but he does it so well, I don't care. You know, it's kind of like Samuel L. Jackson. You know, if you want to add some attitude in a movie, you just throw Samuel L. in, and you're done. It's not like he's a brilliant actor. He's just passable, and he brings attitude to the movie. And I think that's fine. And so I feel the same way about him. You need a tough guy, put in Ray Winstone. It's fine.
Oh, you need or in this case, a sleepwalking drunk.
Yeah. Oh, man. Teresa Palmer is Samsara. She was in The Grudge 2, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, and I Am Number 4. You remember I Am Number 4?
Great movie.
Nobody watched it.
Should have gotten a sequel.
Nobody watched that movie, man. I believe that bombed in the box office, didn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it did. I don't think it did too well.
I remember you and I actually went to go see that movie, and it wasn't bad.
Yeah, it was different, which is why it's a shame. It was really different from, I think how some of the other superhero movies are done. She was also in Warm Bodies, which I thought was really good.
I did really get a chance to see Warm Bodies.
Yeah, I know I've mentioned it before, but she's the female lead in that.
Okay. And I'm going to rattle these next few off here. Matthias Varela Clemens as Gromit, Clemens Schick as Roach, and Tobias Sandelman as Chowder. Those guys were all mainly TV roles. So they haven't done very many movies at all.
Do they ever even say any of these names?
They show up on, like, when the FBI is, like, looking at photos of them.
Oh, okay.
They have their names there, but their names are not really mentioned, which is actually, we'll get into one of the problems with this movie. The last one I'm going to put in, just because I didn't realize he was going to have a bigger part, even though it wasn't a major part, but I have no problem mentioning Delroy Lindo, because his name's Delroy Lindo. But he's been known for doing a ton of Spike Lee movies. He was also in Gone in 60 Seconds and that Congo movie. Right.
Yeah, and he's usually a cop, and he is in this one too.
Yep. He does that. He does those types of roles all the time, and he's always just one of those actors. It's just, I don't even know if I would consider him B-list, but he definitely shows up and stuff every once in a while. All right, now that we're done with these characters, Jones, let's go ahead and get into the quirks and likes here after we take a little break, all right?
Okay.
All right. All right. Now that we're back from our break, let's get into our quirks and likes section. Let's start with my quirks as usual. The very first scene, and I'm sure you've noticed this, but why doesn't he just grab the guy's hand to save him when he falls? Do you remember the very beginning scene?
Yes.
He's on the motorcycle, and they're trying to keep the motorcycle. So they're trying to, like, drive it up, and he puts his hands on the handlebars, like, next to his buddies. And it's like, why didn't you just grab him and just let the bike fall? That makes no sense at all. So he just falls to his death.
Yes. I think the bigger issue with that scene is Like, I'm not sure where they were or whatever, like some weird Monument Valley type thing that they're jumping onto. The bigger issue to me is how were they supposed to get back off of that little island that they land on? Because they ramp up to it and there's no way down from it.
No.
So how does Utah get off of there?
I'm assuming they had the helicopter there. I'm assuming the helicopter was just going to pick them up. That was my assumption anyway. But the other thing I had wrong with this movie, though, Jones, is I think it's too long. I really think it could have been quite a bit shorter. And I think it's like an hour and like 53 minutes or something like that. And I feel like it could have easily been about an hour and 40 minutes, hour and 45, and probably would have been fine. I really, really think that there was a little too much bromance in this movie also. I mean, there's a lot of that in this. And it's...
Don't you love yourself a good bromance, though?
There's just a little too much in there, and I'm like, man, this is tough to watch sometimes. I got one more thing, and that's that freaking rich guy. Could you understand anything that he said? He only had like a few lines, but I didn't understand a word of it. He had this really thick accent, and it's always like him yelling over music. And it's just like I couldn't understand anything with what he was saying at all. I have a lot more quirks, but I am going to let you go. We're doing a little different. I'm going to let you go, and then I want to have a discussion about how I feel like this movie should have went.
Okay.
All right. So what do you got?
To me, I think one of the big things is everything in this movie looks miserable.
Yes.
It's like a muted Valentine's Day in Boston flu season mess.
Yeah.
Everything's really desaturated.
Yeah.
You know, and they're in some amazing locations.
They are.
With some of these stunt people too, and everything just looks like it's a drag.
Yeah.
You know, they just took the color out of everything. And, you know, this director has worked on enough films. It just, to me, everything, you know, why make it look like this? It just looks so bad.
Yeah.
And I think it just, visually, it sets a tone for the movie.
Yeah, I think,
that, doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I agree fully with you on that. And it's even worse that he's spent most of his career as a director of photography.
Yeah.
So he should just know better. But
the Osaki 8, which is the thing that these guys are chasing.
Yeah.
You know, I read about it after the movie. I read about it trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because it gets explained a couple of times, and it gets explained by, I think, a couple of different characters.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense to me. And it doesn't make any sense in that, you know, it's named after this guy who doesn't even get past the third ordeal, or, you know, he accomplishes it, but he doesn't get the 4. So how does he know what the other ones are? Like the ultimate act of trust. You know, I just, it's like the lamest MacGuffin ever.
Yeah.
And we went from seeing the greatest MacGuffin of all time in any movie, which is the search for Luke Skywalker.
Yes.
To maybe the lamest one, which is the quest to achieve the Osaki 8 and achieve Nirvana.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just thought I would bring that up.
All right.
There's a lot of smoking for extreme athletes. Right?
That's awesome.
Who have to be able to hold their breath and compete in thin air conditions, and they're lighting up a lot.
Oh, that is a good point. Oh, I love that.
Another one was really, you know, they mention YouTube quite a bit, and they have these amazing stunts, like the wingsuit sequence.
Yeah.
But everything is chopped all to hell. I mean, it's way over edited. And really what I think would have been cool would have been to see it from like one GoPro camera.
Yes.
And I mean, those scenes are cut up to the point where there's no weight to, it almost takes the danger out of them.
Yeah, I think
because they stop being exciting.
Yeah, I think another way that probably would have been really cool was to have it as a continuous shot.
One continuous shot.
With, it doesn't necessarily have to be a GoPro, but have a guy with a camera behind all of them and just do the scene and go through all these canyons and stuff and then make it seem worse than what it is. And you're right, it is choppy. And I think the entire movie is choppy, to be honest.
Yes, it is. It isn't just that sequence, but to me, it also removes an element of the danger out. Like when the first guy dies on the ski slopes, it's almost cut, the way it's edited, it's almost to a point where you don't seem to care that he's gone.
Well, that's a huge problem with this movie in general, is because you don't give a shit about any of these characters.
Okay. That's true.
I mean, regardless of how it was cut, you don't care. You just don't care about any of these guys, and so that's just a huge issue that I'll talk to you about later here and after you're done with your course.
Well, why don't you go ahead and do your thing? Let's have that discussion, because right. I think my stuff's nitpicky, but that's actually a bigger issue.
Okay, so the reason why I want us to do this differently is because this is another one of those movies where it's similar to, we didn't do this for Pixels, but when we watched Pixels, me and you ended up having a discussion off the podcast, oddly enough, about how we could have improved upon that movie. There's certain things that just would have made the movie just better that they didn't do. And I feel like this movie has that same problem. I feel like the concept of the movie is sound, and it is very similar to the original one. I don't know if you've seen the original, the 1991 with Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze. But yes, it's very similar, and I feel like they did not take a big enough leap in trying to remake this. It's really similar, and I think the thing that would have made this movie better, and I think this one thing would have just completely revamped the entire movie, and I feel like there should have been a change of focus as Bodhi as the main character, and then have Utah as the annoying FBI agent that's trying to take these guys down. The reason why I feel like that's a better way to do this is because, prime example is, you would be able to learn more about Bodhi himself, learn more about Chowder and Roach and Gromit and all those other guys, so that first of all, you'd even care about what happens to them. Then you would also have that Samsara girl. She could have been his girlfriend or wife or whatever. And that way, when Utah kills her, that's a dramatic scene, which would tick him off. And I feel like doing stuff like that would have instantly have made this movie just better. And it's like Luke Bracey's character, Utah, in this movie is more of an annoyance than anything else. He's just not likable. And apparently he can't do the Keanu Reeves likable thing. and it's like, I don't like him at all through the whole movie, and that ruins the whole thing because he's the main character. And they do this little tiny backstory with his friend falling, and that's basically what gets him to the FBI, which you could probably still have that scene in there. But I still think the movie probably should have focused on Bodhi and then focus on the fact that they are doing the Osaki 8 and focus on people finding their own paths, which again, it's one of those stupid little cheesy things, but that was a huge part of this movie was people following their own paths, but they just keep mentioning it, and then they're like, well, his path ends here. Well, then, like, what? Well, what's the point? Like, I would rather have seen that movie than what we have here, which is just, I feel like it's just a mess. I'd rather have just been, you have these guys, this group of guys that are doing this, and they're trying to, be part of nature and give back and do all that stuff. And then they're criminals. And there's ways that you can make criminals good characters. If you watch The Town, you can do this. It's not impossible to do this. And I feel like that would have been a better movie. And then you have Utah as a character that's he's basically the antagonist of this group, but he's actually the good guy. But it doesn't matter. Like, I feel like that would have been a better movie. Plus, if you would have got to know these characters better, you would have cared when they died. I didn't care. I was like, okay, he was in 2 other scenes. I don't give a shit. Right. Like, you don't know anything about these guys. And I feel like that overall would have just been a far better movie, in my opinion. I mean, like, what do you think?
Well, I agree. I mean, I didn't really think about it that way. I think focusing on Bodhi, that seems like a really creative idea. That usually isn't how these movies go. No. I think one of the things that was really troubling to me was that if you're going to use this property and do a reboot and not take a bit of a chance with it, like you were saying, that's really a problem.
Yeah.
And what's so weird is this director worked on The Fast and the Furious, the original.
Yes.
And that is essentially Point Break. That was essentially Point Break with cars. Yeah. And they did it so much better in that movie. And it's like they should have known that their script and their pacing like needed some work, especially for a movie that's about extreme athletes.
Yeah.
Boy, did it seem like you were saying, it was long and it kind of seemed boring.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why a movie like that should be boring.
No, it shouldn't.
If they're going to be, exciting characters.
And that, to me, that is the biggest issue with this movie, is I feel like it would have been a better job focusing on Bodhi, getting to know all these other characters more often, because you don't even know them at all, and you don't even get to know Utah really either, and he's the main character. And it's just such a weird, like, I don't know, this movie's is kind of a mess. And I wasn't expecting much, and I got less than what I was expecting, which is disappointing. I don't know how else to say. I mean, I wasn't even expecting that much from this, and I didn't even get that. So,
well, I thought personally, I thought the trailers, which didn't show too much, I thought made it look better than it was.
Yeah.
As I was watching it, I was like, oh, geez.
Yeah, it's rough, this one. Well, you got any likes about this movie? Because I got a few.
Yeah. You want to go?
Yeah,
go for it?
Well, one of my likes is again, this probably would have been better had they been focusing more on this group and the Osaki 8, but I thought the concept of the Osaki 8 was pretty interesting. Having the guy die during the ordeal is bad. Just to have him complete all of them and then say that you'll experience nirvana here probably would have been a better choice. But I like the concept of the Osaki 8. There's a lot of interesting shots in this movie also where they really show you the beauty of nature. And again, I feel like that was a huge point to this movie that they didn't really... They kept mentioning it, but they really didn't push on that. And I feel like that's another thing that had they done it the way I was thinking they could do it, them talking more about the nature would be good. I also like the concept of follow your path. And again, that is a huge part of this movie, but they didn't really push it. They kept talking about how I can't see your line, or it's your line, or it's your path. And that's something that comes up frequently in the movie. And I feel like, again, if they would have made the movie focusing on this group of guys as opposed to us following Utah trying to capture these guys, all of that would have been a better thing to it. The last thing that I liked about the movie was in the end credits. I do enjoy how they showed everybody's line and their path in the end credits, because that, like I said, that was a huge part of this movie about following your own path, following your own destiny. And I really think that them showing that throughout the movie, where everybody had their different, when they were showing the scenes from the movie and everybody had their own path, I thought that was just a nice little touch for the end credits. That's all I got, man. You got anything?
I really thought that Edgar Ramirez was the best thing about this movie. I think he's probably the best actor who was in there, but he gave off this Zen vibe, which, there's a point where you can kind of sort of see what he's about, but it's almost so abstract to me that, I think you make a good point. If we spend more time with him, maybe understanding that kind of character makes more sense.
Yeah.
But, he may as well have been talking to a bunch of CG characters.
Yes.
Or they could have given him, they could have made Utah a robot sidekick or something. So I guess I did think of two ways to improve the movie. And that would be to just make it totally, absolutely ridiculous. Like the original one, I think it didn't take itself real seriously.
It definitely didn't take itself real seriously. It was one of those borderline movies where it knew what it was, and it took itself seriously when it needed to, and then it just kind of moved on with the rest. And I feel like if this movie would have had more of that tone, again, that would have improved upon the movie. And some of that's in there, when they're messing around, they're in the scenes where they're robbing the banks or stealing those diamonds or whatever. They're those guys are being crazy and acting crazy, which is what you would expect from these groups of guys. I just wish they would have had more information about those. And if the movie was more focused on them, I would be more interested in showing how these guys plan out these heists too, because they were really elaborate. And it's
yes.
Like they just show you like, oh, this happened. I'm like, well, wait a minute, that's more interesting than Utah talking about it. Like,
right.
Like, what's going on here?
So I don't know. To be honest with you, I was really disappointed with this. So I just have the one like. So I guess I lied. I said I had multiple likes, but it just says on here 1. Edgar Ramirez.
Wow.
2. Nothing. There's another quirk too that I'm gonna add in just because, and maybe this is a like. There's a scene where this, crappy Utah pretty boy, gets his ass kicked. They do like some weird Fight Club scene out of nowhere.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any
sense. They
sense.
don't explain it. There's no.
Nope. Again,
there's nothing about it. I guess they just did it to be cool.
Again, had they focused on this group of guys,
we would know why they were. That might have
been an initiation or something, and we would have known more information. That scene would have made more sense.
I guess that's the most I've liked that Utah character. It's when he was getting his face pounded on by Bodie. So, okay, like number 2.
Oh, that's great. Oh, man. I'm assuming you got nothing else then.
Nope.
All right, I think everybody knows what we feel about this movie, but let's go ahead and rate it.
Ooh, okay.
I'm going to say the same thing I said earlier. I wasn't expecting much from this movie. It's a mess, it's choppy, and it didn't even meet my low expectations, so skip it.
That's really honest. Yeah, I think this is probably one of the worst movies I've seen all year.
Oh man, and Fantastic Four was this year.
Well, Fantastic Four, and we're gonna talk about this when we do our little awards thing, but Fantastic Four is the worst movie ever made. And I have the argument to back it up.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Fantastic Four for me wasn't necessarily that it was a terrible movie, because it had. But my biggest issue is that it is an unfinished movie.
It is an unfinished movie.
And
yes.
This movie is finished.
Okay.
It seems complete. And it's still awful. This, Fantastic
Correct.
Four, I think I said this in the Fantastic Four podcast, but I want to see a documentary of the making of that movie to see what the hell happened. Because something really bad happened throughout that whole thing, and you can tell by watching it. It is an unfinished movie. There's these weird reshoots. Most of what shows up in the trailer isn't even in the movie, and even all the production stuff that they showed isn't in the movie. And I'm like, this movie had to have a huge issue, and I want somebody to make that documentary. It needs to happen. I want to know everything that happened with that movie. Come on, Fox. What else are you doing? You make some money off of Fantastic Four by doing that documentary.
Make some money off them and do some joint licensing.
I know, right? Awful, man.
Really, those characters need to go back to the Marvel Universe, in particular Doom.
Yeah.
Is really the one I would really want to see go back. But, as far as this movie goes, this is one of the worst ones I've seen all year, and I love going to the movies. This was really just a fraction of the budget that the Fantastic Four had, though. Yeah. And I think they put it all into filming these stunts, which then got really edited to pieces.
Yeah.
And I think to me, if you went to this movie hoping to see some really cool stunts, they're there, but because of how they're treated in post, it just ruins it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say skip it.
All right, double skip it. Nobody watched this movie. It's awful.
Yeah, and in fact, I wish we could have gotten this. Had I been feeling better, we would have gotten this out quicker.
Yeah.
So some people could have saved their money. Maybe.
Oh, I apologize for those people. Oh, man. All right, well, let's sign out. If anybody wants to contact us, we always have our home on the way, halfpastpodcast.com.
Like us on Facebook.
Rate us on iTunes.
We're on Stitcher and Libsyn.
And email us at halfpastcast@gmail.com. That's halfpastcast@gmail.com.
Tweet us at halfpastpodcast.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support. This coming week here, we're going to do Hateful 8. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
And hopefully next week after that, we'll get Revenant in. So we can watch...
less fun. That movie seems like less fun to me.
We did the Creed podcast, and you and Mark both were just like, I don't like that movie. And it's so weird, because I'm actually excited about it. I'm like, I like Leo, I like Leonardo DiCaprio, I like Tom Hardy, and I like this cinematographer that they have for that too, with Lubeski. And I'm like, I think this is going to be a fun little movie, but it's just going to be another one where Leo's not going to get an Academy Award, so it's fine, I guess.
Well, that may not be the case. That remains to be seen. As Mark pointed out, they got to get him one eventually.
They do have to get him one eventually. I don't know if it's going to be this one, but...
But, I guess the thing about that, and we'll see...
that dog... There's been a dog
Is there a dog barking over
There's been
a
dog barking throughout the entire podcast. Oh,
this podcast
man.
has some special sound effects.
Yep.
The co-pilot sounds weird, and you may hear a dog.
Well, you know what? Let's just end it on that.
Okay.
This is the Half Past Podcast. I'm Graham Ricks.
Surf's up.
See you next flick.